lot of us would love to just be a goodie, but our job in someone else's story is to be bad.
Oh, there isn't a me. I am a process. Like, that's what I am. I am change.
If your coach isn't getting coaching, you have to question whether they believe in the process.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Seeking Balance podcast. This week, I bring you a conversation with Elliot Roe. Elliot is a hypnotherapist and a performance coach. He's worked with many of the greats in poker, from Phil Galfond to Fedor Holtz. He has over 15,000 hours of coaching across different industries, from business to UFC to poker. And I had a great time talking with Elliot. We dive into the details of his work and mine and how they differ and the things that we've both learned along the way of working with high performers. So Elliot was very kind to join us here, and I really appreciated his time, and I hope you all enjoy. Elliot, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this, man.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you. Where are you at in the world, by the way?
I'm in Salt Lake City in Utah.
Oh, wow. I was expecting Austin because that seems where everyone is from.
Everyone's from Austin, yeah. These days, it seems to be the case. But yeah, I've been here for about 10 years now. We're in Vegas prior to that, and obviously from London originally.
Nice. How did you like living in Vegas?
I really enjoyed it. It was good for that age.
Yeah.
It was great pre-kids. Pre-kids, it was great.
Okay, so I have 2 kids myself, and I've considered moving there just because there's so much work there. But you're saying post kids, you wouldn't recommend it?
I mean, for us, we had twins, and we wanted to be near family just for the help. So we didn't have family in Vegas. So for us, it was the right place.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'll keep that in mind. So before we jump in too deeply, just like tell everybody what it is you do, however briefly it is you can do that, and catch people up on why it is you're here.
So I'm a mindset and performance coach. I've done this for the last 15 or so years now. Work with high performers in different industries. So a lot of the people listening to this might know me from poker. I've worked with a lot of the top poker players in the world over the last 15 years. Also worked with a lot of Wall Street traders, CEOs of companies, founders of companies, professional athletes. Really, my niche is helping people who are performing at 95% and they're trying to reach top in the world. And we're trying to get them to 97, 98%, because that small percentage increase is worth an awful lot of money to them or happiness to them. So that's really my client profile and the sort of work that I do. My modality is hypnotherapy. So a lot of this is regression-based work where we're looking at the individual's past. We're trying to understand where the programs may have come from that are causing self-sabotage. So fear of failure, fear of success, procrastination issues, anxiety issues, anger issues, whatever it might be, looking back to their programming, to their memories as to where that may have came from, then releasing the emotion around it and working through it. So that's sort of a very short synopsis of what I do.
Yeah. So I think some people hear hypnotherapy and it may erroneously or incorrectly associate with some kind of like woo-woo or like, but it's a very validated science. Can you explain a little bit about like how the mechanism of hypnotherapy, like what it is you just described, how does that actually work? Yeah.
So a lot of people, the first thing they think of is stage hypnosis or TV show hypnosis. So that's going to be the guy waving a watch and everyone collapses and it's all a magic show. The way to view this is like guided meditation with a purpose. So you're looking for a very similar state. So anyone who's listening to this, watching this, who's meditated in their life, what you're looking to do is you follow your breath, you get yourself into a very calm, relaxed state. And then as your thoughts move away, you bring them back to your breath again. And that's the process of mindfulness meditation. With hypnotherapy, what we're looking to do is to reach that same very relaxed trance-like state, which is where your subconscious is dominant. And instead of just focusing back on the breath, we want to focus on a specific emotion. So it may be anxiety. So an example for poker that a lot of poker players might recognize is if I'm working with a player who struggles with getting 3-bet by the same opponent in the live game, they'll say, hey, I get really anxious, or they get really angry every time this guy 3-bets me. Um, as we work through that issue, it will nearly always start to bring up feelings of being bullied in childhood, memories of being bullied. So it's just this one seems to be a bullying issue. We'll then go back to those memories. So in a hypnosis state, everything becomes very vivid, and you bring up memories that you wouldn't if we weren't utilizing hypnotherapy, because the subconscious is dominant. So the subconscious is showing the pathway to why the bell is ringing. So it knows why you're particularly uncomfortable, because otherwise you wouldn't be particularly uncomfortable in that situation. So it takes you back to these core memories, and where there'll typically be an initial sensitizing event. So typical memory is, I'm 7 years old, this other kid's punching me, I'm terrified, it feels like life and death. And then we'll reframe that from an adult perspective. So how does that look to 35-year-old you? Okay, this is two 7-year-olds having a fight in the schoolyard. This isn't a life and death situation. And then, go back to that child, tell him he's safe, tell him he's loved, release the stress and emotion. Oftentimes they'll cry during this process because there's so much trapped emotion that you wouldn't be aware was there, but it is trapped. And then as we release the emotion, when they go back to the poker table, they're not triggered in the same way, because that memory is not firing in the way that it was previously. So what that means is the three bet is something to adjust to rather than something to take personally. So that's the process that I'm utilizing over and over again with clients in different industries.
Yeah, and this basically is, because you mentioned like the term, like my modality is hypnotherapy, and I think for people who may be like less familiar with like the field of psychotherapy, correct me where I'm wrong, but like this is basically your, showing the mind a new environment for a similar trigger, if you will. So like a particular environment, you're going to it in a like relaxed state. And then the experience of kind of revisiting that in a different kind of environment and a different kind of attitude can more or less like heal this pathway, right?
So what it is we're designed to pick up fears as an evolutionary tool. So if you imagine, it's incredibly useful for the survival of the species to pick up fears quickly. So we're in the jungle, you're 5 years old, your mom sees a tiger, she starts screaming. You pick up a fear of tigers. If you see a tiger again, it's something dangerous, run away. So we're designed for, in our childhood, pick up the fears quickly so that we can survive in whatever location we've been brought up in. So, if you're in the Arctic, perhaps it's polar bears or whatever else. Um, realistically, a lot of it's tribal, and we need to keep the rest of the tribe happy to stay alive. So that's why all of these social anxieties are picked up so quickly, because it keeps you alive in a tribal environment. Now, what we're doing here is all memory is plastic, it's malleable. So if you go back to a memory from your school right now, and then you go back to that same memory tomorrow, it's going to be slightly different. It's not like a photograph, it's a sense. So we have all of these memories that have been stored. And as I say, I view it as some of them have this stored trapped emotion in them, this emotional weight, which is why we have a physical sensation around them. And by going back and replaying them with a sense of safety and love, we're effectively overwriting that traumatic memory. Because as we go back to it's not as terrifying anymore, because there's now a new version of it that's been played, where you went back as your adult self and you helped the child and you showed love and affection, all of these things. And by gradually overriding these traumatic memories, there just isn't, as I describe it, as a bell to ring in those
Right.
memories.
Yeah, this is like the idea of implicit memory, right? Like you have these memories that are even if you're not reliving the, let's say, image of this event happening to you, right? You said like someone three bets you, the emotional memory is the thing that's being
So
triggered.
it's extraordinarily rare that someone will be reliving the memory in the moment. They're just feeling the emotional toll of it. So the tension in their chest, their racing heart, the anxiety experience. And it's through the subconscious modalities that those memories will then show themselves. So it's very rare for someone to say to me, hey, I feel anxious when I get three bet because I was bullied when I was 7. Like, I don't think I've ever had someone come to me with that belief as the starting point. They say, I feel extremely anxious. It doesn't make sense. This is a game. This is just one decision point in a game, and I'm feeling attacked. And it's through this process that we see that the feeling of being attacked is coming from those memories in the past.
Hey guys, just cutting in real quick to say that my Discord is now going to a donation based model. So it'll be open to everybody. We do weekly guided meditations in that. There's a community of people. We talk about all kinds of issues that come up, as well as there are monthly seminar topics on things like performance and relationships and all types of topics that I find interesting and that I think will help you become the best that you can and accomplish everything you want in life. So if you're interested in that community, link will be below. Yeah, I know from my own personal journey, it was very helpful to start framing these kinds of responses as memory because I mean, if you think about different like mediums by which we have memory, right? Like you have images, there's obviously that, but you even have like somatic, like I can ask you to remember like what it feels like to run your fingers on carpet or grass and you can kind of feel it. There's also like, yeah, like you said, like these emotional states that are memories that I think a lot of people don't realize it is a memory. Like you're reliving a memory, but because it's not visual, it's not as like concrete as that. The two experiences I have with people is either the one you said where it doesn't make sense, or people are intent on convincing themselves it makes sense, right? They're like intent on convincing themselves this is completely appropriate for the situation that I'm in,
Have to
right?
be anxious. I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to be
like
anxious.
exactly, yeah,
I'm so attached.
right. But it, you know, so you mentioned meditation. I don't know if you probably don't know this, but my background is almost exclusively in meditation. So I've sat over like 13 silent retreats, and this is like a big part of my personal practice. And I had a teacher who used to say fear is just a memory of pain. And it was like super useful as like this idea that when you're like reliving this, yeah, like you said, we have this memory of pain coming up. And knowing that like I'm experiencing a memory for me took some of the intensity out of the moments, if that makes sense.
I think that makes it's a wonderful description.
Yeah. Yeah. So how is it you got to doing this? Like what brought you to doing this?
So very bizarre
Yeah.
story. So I was working in investments, renewable energy investments, and property investments back in sort of 2007, 2008. Had a big fear of flying. And to the extent of I wouldn't do long haul flights, it would ruin my vacations. Just the thought of flying. So I'd go to Spain from England, it would be 2 hours, and I'd be terrified. And then you'd be terrified of getting the flight back. And I went to a hypnotherapist, and she managed to resolve it in an hour. And it completely changed my life. So effectively, what opened up the world to me. And the process was extremely interesting. So, as I described, we go into this sort of meditative like state, and she starts tracing back the physical sensations of the memories I'm dealing with. And a memory came up of me being at my grandfather's house as a small child, being shown a picture of a small plane and being told it had crashed and killed his business partner. And it wasn't a memory I had any conscious recollection of. She went through the same process I just described as we released the emotion from it. And as I came out of the session, I was acutely aware I no longer had a fear of flying. I then spoke to my parents and found out that it was a real memory. And they were like, yeah, of course that happened. You know, that plane crashed. So I had an understanding as to why I had picked up such a deathly fear of flying because my subconscious was saying, this is life and death every time you get on a plane. And because of that, I went and got trained thinking it would be a fun skill to have to help friends and family. So I was going to be in my mind working in investments, and then someone would say they're scared of spiders, and I'll say, oh, I can fix your fear of spiders. I started working with friends and family in the evening, and it just went really, really well. So they would then tell their friends, who would tell their friends, who would tell their friends. It started building a business in the background that I was thoroughly enjoying. So I was getting a lot more satisfaction out of helping people than I was in, finding fields for solar energy farms and things like that. and then I
Strange.
started, yeah, surprising. Um, and then I started working with some sort of local mid-level like social golfers playing at a high standard and seeing their scores improve pretty dramatically. And from there, I had a friend who worked in the poker industry, and she was like, "Oh, well, if you could help poker players play better on final tables, it's worth millions to them. So then I just went and offered free sessions for about 6 months to poker players, and it really took off. We'd moved to Vegas, and so I was doing that. I went to some of the UFC gyms. I had a background in MMA, and I gave talks to the UFC fighters, and I picked up some UFC fighter clients that way. Um, and then I saw crazy success in both of those industries. So I worked with multiple UFC champions in poker. I mean, the client wins now. It's like officially over $250 million of cashes, but it's way, way more than that with my non-public clients. Um, so it was just this growth over those years, and then because I was working with successful poker players, they play poker at the highest levels with CEOs of companies. They play poker with Wall Street traders. They play poker with crypto traders, and my name spread into those industries. And obviously, those industries are uncapped. So the money that can be made by a trader on Wall Street is very different to the money that can be made by a poker player or someone running a multinational company. The scales are just so different. So now the majority of my work is with those kinds of clients, and then also still some very high stakes poker players, but it's definitely moved much more towards trading and business.
Correct me if I'm wrong. There is a like a suggestibility index, is there not, for like hypnotherapy, like a test you can take that like somewhat
Yeah,
reveals?
I actually disagree with those.
Okay.
Pretty substantially. Yeah, so I believe there's a difference between suggestibility and being able to go through a regression based process. So I believe that anyone who is capable of meditation can reach the states that are needed to be able to bring up the memories for them to work through those memories, those situations, resolve the trauma. In terms of the suggestion side, that's when you go and watch a stage show, 2% of the audience are going to be extraordinarily suggestible, and they're going to be the people that you see on stage doing the tricks. But virtually nobody. It's going to be around 2 to 5% of the audience. Some of it's suggestibility, some of it's they want to do it. But there is some level of suggestibility within there.
Right. Or
That's
overlap between the two.
yeah,
Yeah,
some
yeah.
exactly Venn
Yeah.
diagram. But I actually see it as so long as you're capable of meditation, which is virtually everybody, um, then you can reach the states that are needed for this kind of therapeutic work.
Well, it's interesting, the question that comes to mind for me, because, you say anyone who's capable of meditation. Meditation itself, though, is definitely a skill. And I guess I would ask, do you find that there is one, does just someone's attentional skill increase their success in something like this? And do you run into people who just can't do what you're asking them to do?
So I've worked with, well, I've done over 15,000 hours of this.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot. I see 20 odd clients a week for 15 years. Um, so I've done an awful lot of hours. There are two clients I've worked with who it was not for them. So it's a very, very, very tiny percentage. In one case, he didn't want to close his eyes, and this is an eyes closed process. And if someone is saying, "I'm not closing my eyes," and I say, "Well, this is an eyes closed process," it's just wasting everybody's time. And in another case, the, the gentleman really struggled with any kind of visualization in any part of his life. So if you said, imagine a pink elephant, what does your house look like? What does a door look like? What does the number two look like? He had absolutely no ability to access that part of his mind at all. Um, and it was something he was aware of when he came to me. He said, just so you know, this is something, I've been diagnosed with this. And in that case, it was an extreme struggle and it wasn't the right modality for him. But this is out of that literally thousands of people. But in general, it's quite easy to get someone who wants to reach that state to reach that state. It's certainly easier than meditation on your own. So it's a bit like if you listen to a guided meditation audio versus if you sit in silence. It's much easier if you're listening to an audio.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, someone I teach meditation, and I have definitely seen it beneficial to people to be guided for a while before just sitting in silence on their own. I think it can be difficult for people to even know if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing when you just went just out on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that do you work outside specifically of the modality of hypnotherapy much with people?
I mean, my sessions were a combination of what I would say would be coaching and hypnotherapy. There's a lot of accountability. There's an awful lot of them utilizing me as a sounding board. I've got so many reps of pattern recognition now with high performers, that I can often see the issues that a client is having. Just as I say, purely 15,000 hours is an awful lot of hours, and the vast majority of that is with peak performers in different industries. So, um, I have a database in my mind, of of issues, of understandings of problems. So a lot of it is just talking through those issues, and then as we find the big emotional blocks, that's where we sort of utilize the hypnotherapy. So it's a combination of both.
Do you see I've never undergone hypnotherapy, but I've, been I've had psychotherapy, just like talk therapy, if you will. And obviously the meditation that I've done. I have this sense, and you can correct me where I'm wrong, that there's some drawback to the progress being done under a particular state, if that makes sense. That there are, so in meditation, one of my teachers used to tell me there's kind of two skills you're cultivating. There's like making peace and finding peace. And so like making peace is like when it's kind of the skill of understanding how your own internal physics works. So like an experience comes up, if you feel it's not wholesome or skillful in this moment, kind of knowing what kind of mental states or attitudes might counteract that and bring more balance to the mind. But then there's this finding piece, which is actually just kind of allowing everything to be, that like nothing really needs to change, that I can be in a moment, be filled with anxiety, and have this move where I can see the anxiety for what it is. And it actually doesn't feel like it has a lever on my behavior at all. And I feel like what I'm hearing you describe is very much like a making peace process, like how to change the kind of internal physics of the mind where certain experiences don't arise. But I feel like there's like a limited lever of action on people where, how do I deal with these things if they, even some of the more subtle things when they do arise? And do I have this skill of finding peace in the midst of experience that I don't quite know how to get away from, if that makes sense?
So the way I view this is, that's in the integration piece between the sessions. So you have the sessions where you're doing the deep work, and then in between, the client's going to be facing everyday life. These challenges are going to come up, and they're going to be taking note of what has changed, what hasn't changed. How am I dealing with this situation? Am I able to view, the long term reality versus the short term emotional response that I'm feeling right now? I see it as sort of this, we do some work, we set them free. They'll be doing their meditation, potentially journaling, keeping me in the loop, sort of just trying to fine tune. And then we'll go into another session and potentially be working on the same issue, but we might be working in a different direction if they feel that they've made that progress. But I believe with all of these modalities, most of the work is done in the integration afterwards, rather than it being done within the hour, in general, especially when it comes to this real like optimization, fine tuning work, which is a lot of the work that I'm doing, um, rather than it being necessarily, huge, big T trauma.
Yeah. I mean, my experience with meditation retreat has been very similar. And usually the feedback I give people who have sat a retreat is that like the retreat is a tiny part of the thing you're trying to accomplish. Like, because I for some years now I've sat 2 retreats a year, and most of the rewarding, for lack of a better word, gains I've experienced in my life have been between retreats, not in the retreat, right? And there's these moments in retreat that can feel very insightful and transcendent and eye-opening, but it's like you said, integrating that into your life in a reasonable way.
Yeah, I mean, I think any of these peak experiences in this kind of work, so in a retreat setting or in the hypnotherapy session or another peak experience of these types of therapies, you're planting a flag in the ground for the client to then, or the individual to then work towards that flag that's now been placed, perhaps in a place you didn't have access to plant it previously. So you're going on a meditation retreat and you may have that peak experience, that transcendent experience, and you've now had that experience. So you know what you're working towards, but without that retreat, you wouldn't have that flag to walk towards.
So this is where this is interesting, because in the meditation practice, these experiences are considered obstacles on the path. They are not considered goals in their own right, if you will. They're considered, many people have these experiences, but it is actually the effort to view that as a better part of you, like a better experience, like a better version of me in that moment that I want to get back to. That actually is an obstacle to the path. And that this moment, exactly as it is kind of
Where we should be. So
where we should be, right?
yeah, so I see the those moments as an experience of pure flow. So I see it as this is me at my most truly present. So that feeling, that's how I experience those sensations. Is this is me at my peak flow, and this is how I would be living my life if I could remove all of the masks. I would be in this state of presence, and it's in the state of presence where absolute peak performance comes. In my belief, that's when the athlete performs at their best, the poker player, the trader. So I view that as a mark of extreme presence, and that's the sensation. But obviously, it's very nuanced.
Yeah, I think, because to try to thread this nuance a little, because I think there are, what you're describing might be is that I think the experiences I'm describing on retreat are ones of just change in affective experience, which can be very powerful. So you can be flooded with positive affect. You can have a moment of, let's say, expansive love, like where you just feel connected with all beings, right? And that is just like floods you. But you're actually not totally present in the midst of that, because in the midst of that experience, you are resisting the experience ending, right? Like you can have this sense in the midst of it that, like, I
I
want
don't
this
want
to
this
be
to end.
forever. Yeah, I don't want this to end. And real flow is like this, it ends and it doesn't even like register on your radar that this experience ended. It's the nature of reality for experiences to come and go. And so I think moments of true presence, as you're describing, that can be a useful uh, flag in the ground, if you will, of like, that was what it was like to be present. I guess I'd be curious to hear what are things, because in the you know I come from a Buddhist background, so in the Buddhist background, the marker of real center of the bullseye presence is losing the sense of self. It is there is no me here. Like, all experience is just kind of happening. I'm not the receiver of experience at the center of my brain. But to me, the work you're doing seems to work on this other level of the story of you, the actual sense of self.
So it's interesting the way. Um, that's a really interesting way of putting it. So I believe that the memories and traumas and lessons we've learned have created effectively masks, which are then stopping true presence from hitting. And what the work that we're doing in the story work is effectively allowing the client to put down those masks. And then the more they put them down, the easier it is for them to reach that level of presence, because the story is no longer firing those emotions in the same way. So it's like we're removing the shield to say, I mean, my mantra for this year is I'm working really hard at being the most Elliot version of Elliot. And there's a lot of stories that I've still got. I mean, I do a ludicrous amount of self work, like ludicrous, and there is still masks for me to drop, and there's still work to do and shields to put down. But I always seem to feel that as I progress through this, I'm becoming a more honest version of me, a more true version of myself. And from that state, I'm able to be more present and have more of those flow moments. So it's linked to the story, but I feel like the story is creating the block to the present.
Well, I think many of these events too are a big part of where we have constructed the ideas of who we think we're supposed to be. Right. So it is this sense of identity. A lot of them have come from our most traumatic experiences where it's like, I need to be this person because this is the person who is worth love. This is the person who will get accepted. And it's actually through, like you're saying, like dropping some of those masks. I completely agree with you because the people who the people who I've sat a lot of retreats with, one thing that I've noticed in the kind of meditation circles is a lot of what I call spiritual bypassing happening, where people are aiming directly at this kind of peak experience of the loss of self, but they actually haven't really accepted who they are yet. And so there's all this like subconscious, even their attempts to meditate are animated by their own like subconscious neuroses of like trying to get away from who they are. And it's been interesting in my own personal journey to find how much like accepting who you are and like letting go of who you are kind of like these two parts
All
of this
intertwined.
all intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're all good and bad, and I think that the sort of the balance piece. You know, a lot of us would love to just be a goodie, but our job in someone else's story is to be the baddie. Like, there's a balance here of where as much as we try, we are going to play both roles, and everyone else is going to play both roles as well. And I think having acceptance of that is very important as well, um, in terms of this self progress that we're trying.
Yeah, I mean that's just the nature of being in relationship with anything, right? Is that there's like these two vantage points on something. The more and more I work with people, the more I'm realizing how important the just relationships are. Your relationship to poker, but your relationship with other people. And like I think the way that you allow, just like you said, like the your degree of allowing yourself to be the bad person in someone else's story is a good sign of how at peace you are with just existing in relationship with things where it's like I don't control this whole network of things. Like some things view me in a way that I don't want. Um, yeah, I'm curious. What are some of the big? You've mentioned you work with like 15,000 hours. A lot of people. What are some of the like? Do you have ways in which your views of what it is you're doing, your performance philosophy, or has changed over the years, or like big moments that have shifted and like, well, big insights you've had in working with people?
One of the biggest insights I've had is understanding what success and happiness and satisfaction certainly aren't linked. I think there was some naivety early in my career that, when someone becomes number one in the world, they're going to be elated, and you're elated for half an hour. But I actually feel the real work happens with the client once we get them past their financial goals. So there are a lot of, you were mentioning identity, and there are a lot of people out there who they're working towards a specific number or goal, and they believe when they reach that point, it's happy ever after. They've won. Um, and everyone has to learn that themselves. It doesn't matter how many times I say that's not going to be the case. It's not going to fix everything. What I've found now is I've taken a large number of clients to these sort of peak levels of success, and then nothing changes. They've got a bigger number in the bank account, but they still feel the way they felt, but they no longer have a goal. So it's actually now an uncomfortable situation of I no longer have a target and I'm lost. And that's when some of the interesting deeper work, the relationship with themselves work happens, once that obstacle of success has been removed by them having that success. And that's been really interesting to follow as a pathway over the years. I've worked with a lot of people. I've had exits and, those sorts of events where it's the real work happens after it rather than before it.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So do you find that your kind of approach is like, let's get you there kind of so you can see what I'm saying? Let's get you there
Yeah,
faster. Yeah.
get you there. I'll get you. Okay, you want to make $50 million.
Yeah.
Let's get you to $50 million as soon as possible. And then once you have the money, then we can do the real work on you being satisfied and happy, because that comes after you find out that the $50 million doesn't do that.
So where do you fit this idea Because for me, I feel like a lot of my work is more the almost the opposite, but you can thread this needle as you see fit, which is your happiness is going to help you get the $50 million. Like if you're happy and content, it's going to be easier to get there. Like you're going to work more in line with yourself.
Oh, and certainly that is the case. Um, but I feel until that's reached, that true happiness is often hard to grasp. So again, we're refining it. We're removing those obstacles. But the biggest obstacle is the thought that that money is going to fix something, and that one, the sort of the end boss, doesn't get removed until the big moment happens. And yeah, we have to remove all of the other work, and they have to be believing that they have value and purpose in their mission that they're looking for to fulfill, and it does provide the purpose and the value over those years. And I think it's a really good thing to have these targets. Um, I believe that everything that we do in life, whether it's poker or business, is just a way for us to find ourselves and challenge ourselves and learn the lessons that we're here for. So I think it's important to have these goals, and they can be monetary, but it's not to have an expectation that there is a happy ever after it.
Yeah, definitely. Did you, because what this sounds like to me is very much just like respecting your client's process. Like I think that the more I work with people has become more important, where when a client tells me something's really important to them, I think earlier in my work, if I disagreed that it was going to give them the thing that they wanted, I would get wrapped up wasting time trying to like convince them that that was not going to be the thing. Whereas now I have learned that like it's people have their own process, and you kind of have to trust their inner sense of what's important to them. And if what I believe is true, it will reveal itself in time to them. If not, then it won't. Do you, first of all, do you agree with that? And secondly, have you always felt that way towards your clients, or have you learned to kind of respect this process a bit more? Or
I think there's clearly still some nudging towards my personal preferences. Like,
yeah,
I'd like to pretend it's clearly, but I
yeah,
push,
yeah,
um, and I'm quite open from my initial client sales calls. This is how I am. This is what I believe. This is the kind of work we're going to do. Um, there are a lot of people who don't want to delve into their past, and I am the wrong coach for them. If someone says, "Hey, I just want to be looking into the present and the future, and I don't want to think about what happened," I'm just the wrong coach. So I won't take on those clients. So there is some kind of selection there as well. I'm taking on clients who want to do the work that I offer. Um, and then it's a fun game of us being a team to work towards their success. And it's not me doing something to them. It's us working together for them to have the most optimal level of performance that's possible for them.
well, one, even in the selection process, I think there is a respect of, the client's process there happening when they say, I don't want to do that. There's just also respect for you happening, which is like, then I'm not the guy for you, you know? Yeah. Uh, do you find, I know for myself, the process of coaching, working with people was some of the best environment for me to work on myself. Like it became a therapeutic process in itself, because at least I can say for myself that I came up against um, my own beliefs about what it means to help somebody, and what it means to be a helpful person, and what it means like to be deserving of the money that they're giving me to help them. And, all of this came up. Was there a similar therapeutic process for you in stepping in more and more to working with people?
Oh, completely. In the way that I said, I believe there are those who are looking for their understanding of life through poker or understanding through business. Mine is finding my understanding of life through coaching. So this is the path that I've chosen to take, and this is the one that's going to throw up the challenges to me. So exactly the same as you. There have been sessions where things have come up, and I've realized I have issues with that subject, and I have to go and talk to my coach and go and work on my own issues. And as you say, self worth, imposter syndrome issues that come up. Yeah, there's an awful lot when you're dealing with the inner workings of the mind, and you're hearing about all of the stories and all of the traumas of thousands of people. So it's been a wonderful place for me to discover my own problems.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is this a private fact? Do people know who your coach or your own mentor is, or people you look up to in your life?
I don't usually discuss.
Yeah. That's fair. I have my own as well, and I just think I do think it's useful for people to know that most people who are working in that we have our own people who we.
I mean, yeah, I think it's actually key that your coach is getting coaching. So, I mean, in my case, I've had long-term coach who does hypnotherapy with me, relationship coach, a sleep coach, business coach, personal trainer, and I also do things like I'll go for Reiki energy work sessions as well. So I have coaches in many parts of my life to try and optimize. And I think if your coach isn't getting coaching, you have to question whether they believe in the process.
Mm, that's a really powerful point.
Yeah, because if they think they're done,
Right.
if anyone tells me they're the finished product, I'm very, very concerned.
Yeah. I'm very skeptical.
But I mean, and maybe they're just levels ahead of me and they are the finished product. But
Yeah.
I see this as an ongoing, like I am my own work until I die, and we're trying to constantly sharpen the blade, and it can be infinitely sharp, and there is no end point to this. So yeah, certainly, I really dig in on that side.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been fascinating to me to sitting meditation retreats I've sat with what I consider some like incredibly wise people, far wiser than I, and like far more uh you know enlightened, I guess you could use the term. But many of them have their own teachers, and like many of them are still, and so it's very humbling to sit with somebody who you can just feel their presence. They're so with you, so and yet they will openly admit like that they are working with their own teachers. And yeah, I think I've also experienced like it makes me a better coach being the recipient of coaching, like tons, in the sense that I see my own coach do things that like I'm like, man, you're better at that than I am. Like uh yeah. Hey guys, just so you guys know, it does take a lot to produce this content for you. So if you appreciate what I do here at the channel, I would really love if you guys could both like and subscribe and share this content with anybody that you think might appreciate it. As well as that, there's a link below for donations. And if you're interested in supporting the channel, donating to the channel is a great way to do it. So if that's something you're interested in, please do so below. What are the big differences in working with people in poker versus out of poker, or are there?
Interestingly, there's no difference.
Okay.
I've found it. Humans are humans, and we're sort of, as I say, playing this game of proving ourselves in one way or another. And the emotional issues that show themselves that I'm working on are the same: fear of failure, fear of success, imposter syndrome. Am I enough? Whether it's a UFC fighter going for a title, or a poker player, or a stock trader, um, it's just human emotion. So obviously there's nuance. From the more accountability side, we're going to be having the poker players doing different things to the UFC fighters and all of that sort of stuff. And some industries, people are much more analytical than other industries. Um, but when it gets to the core of performance, my belief is we're dealing with humans, and therefore everyone is just the same.
Do you find that there's just different? The thing that so I've worked with a few people in things like, let's say, business and some other sports, and the main thing though that I do sense the difference that poker players deal with more than other industries is just variance. I think there is variance in everything else in life, but like you take a chess player for example, it's just like infinitely less variance, right? It's just like if I'm just much better than you, I'm just beating you.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, there's variance in fighting. Things like chess, there isn't. Certain sports, there isn't variance. There were very much variance. It is definitely skill set. Trading, I would say, potentially more variance than poker. Sports betting, the variance is very strong. Um, but again, I just see this as an emotional trigger
Right.
that is showing up in a human being. Um, and the variance of poker is very visible, but the variance in business of, the number of businesses I've worked with where they're going through a sale process, and a week before the exit, the buyer pulls out and they lose everything they've been working on. They've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in the sale process of their company, and it all stops. So there are these sort of moments of extreme variance that they face as well, just not on a daily basis, but they happen in these like mammoth nuclear bomb like moments of variance. So it still sort of shows itself, but it's just distributed differently.
Yeah. The way I put this is it really just shows your relationship. Like, what is your relationship with that which you don't control? Like, with how much ease can you meet that? And typically, like you said, people who have a very tenuous, difficult relationship with variance, as they call it, they have had very difficult experiences in their life with things they don't control. Where I've worked with people who have this sense of doom around variance. They think they're always going to be on the bad side of it. And for me, that's surprisingly enough, many of the people who they in their childhood that they didn't have any control over were just not on not on their team, like not on their side, like working against them. And um, yeah, that's a good point. That it really is. I think in Western culture we have a strong emphasis to making things like the thing, like the variance is the thing, but like the relationship with it to me is almost always the thing. Like, what is this evoking in you?
What's the meaning that you give it?
Yeah. And how do you cognize that? This brings me to a question of, do you find one of the things I'm careful of, and one of the things I think is easy in performance coaching to kind of evoke, is people's sense that they're not good enough, right? That this feeling is an indicator that they're not good enough, or this thing. And sometimes I worry about, I guess I wonder about some of your work, because this comes up also in the meditation space often, where you're kind of trying to change certain feelings that come up. But I think it's easy for that to reinforce the sense of inadequacy, that that I need to get better, I need to be fixed. Because there's, for example, in this variance sense, I view there's two things that kind of exacerbate this. There's the immediate relationship with variance, which is like, I don't control this and I don't trust that which I don't control. But then there's also how you cognize that fact about yourself, right? Which is, maybe I cognize that as a good poker player shouldn't feel this way, or right, or like this I need to, or the opposite of, people don't understand how much variance is against me, or like, like there's this other layer of cognizing this fact. That to me is actually a more fragile thing. Like, I think that has to be like treated with far more care than the actual immediate relationship. But I'm curious what this evokes in you.
Yeah, I sort of view it as I'm trying to get the client to switch the mindset of, it's great news, I get to work on something, because that's the entire game. Like, again, my viewpoint on life is that we're looking for the areas where we can get the biggest gains and the best change, and the increase in satisfaction. So if we find, hey, variance is an enormous trigger to me, that means I'm not enough. It's actually this is an area where you can have exponential gains in your quality of life. Like, this is a wonderful thing that we found this, and we know exactly where we need to focus. And it doesn't make you bad. It just means you have high potential. It's like a bodybuilder who's never trained his legs. I'm bad because I've got small legs. It's like, no, you're going to get great gains. Like, you've
Right.
never trained your legs. Like,
Right.
you're gonna
Yeah.
you're gonna gain
Yeah.
more muscle than any of the other guys who've been training
Most
them.
most improved.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the framing I like to switch it to, is, okay, we get to work on this, and this is going to have a huge impact on your performance and your quality of life, and we don't need to be down on it. But we do need to accept that if you want to reach the highest level of performance, that's where your effort's going to need to go.
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of like a cognitive therapy of just like reframing this as like an interesting challenge in your life, like an interesting. How do you handle though if people are resistant to this framing, or even it depresses them? Like, they're just like, because they feel like they can't get there, like.
Well, I mean, that's when it's, hey, this is where the work is for the hypnotherapy, and that's when we're trying to change it. So that would be, we're then coming up with an irrational subconscious blocker, and that's exactly what I want to find.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
It's just like
excellent,
perfect. Just like,
excellent. I mean, this is absolutely ideal. There's an
yeah,
irrational response here. Clearly, this is irrational. Something in your subconscious is being thrown up, and we can explore that through a subconscious modality. So they may not be able to overcome it in a conversation. But once we get into the subconscious modalities, that then gives us a chance to do that work. So, yeah, in my case, in those moments, like my mouth's watering. I'm like, "Yep, we know
yeah,
exactly where
yeah,
we're going
yeah,
today," and
yeah.
that's the framework I'm following.
It's funny because I think I respond similarly in the sense of like, okay, this is where our work begins, but my modality is more of one of like, let's just meet this experience with kindness. Like the relational modality is more mine, where it's like, okay, now this is coming up in a relationship, and I can show you that this feeling is fine, and that like I can welcome this out. And then in my experience, when people actually are allowed and given space to just like feel that feeling fully, it just kind of burns itself up, and then they just no longer feel that way, if that makes sense. But yeah, yeah. I am envious of, there is something about, just the hypnotherapy modality where it's just like, oh, we just have a thing to do now. Like that's nice. And I think for people who, where I can really see this helping, if people who have been to like lots of different kinds of therapeutic modalities and it's just like not jiving for them, like the progress doesn't seem to be getting made. And I think the unique thing that I'm thinking now that seems really beneficial about hypnotherapy is because it's like a, for more or less a better word, like a structured skill. It leaves less to the to chance in terms of who you're getting as a therapist, if you will, like, or you can say what you think. But I think there's probably lots of people who are out there doing like psychotherapy who probably have no business
Doing so.
doing it, you know?
I mean, it's definitely. Um, I believe with modalities like this, they are an art, not a science. But because of the level of structure and you're tracing back emotions to where the subconscious takes you, um, I think there's definitely a much easier framework for a practitioner to follow. And so it's much more likely, especially if you're following this regression based, that you can get a substantial amount of change in a lower risk environment in that way. I mean, I have a whole team of coaches I've trained, so we have different experience levels and price points and such. Um, but I think the real interesting thing is someone's done a lot of talking therapy is really understanding that if they're not getting there and they're still finding that they're following irrational thought processes, talking about it more probably won't help, right? So this is the way I try and describe it is, if you imagine working on a computer, and if you're working with the conscious mind, it's a little bit like you're moving the windows around the screen. And then with the subconscious, you're digging into the DOS programming behind it that's running the Windows system. And sometimes it doesn't matter how much more you move the windows around, you're just not going to solve the problem. And that's where I think the subconscious work can really be very beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you definitely have to work on the level of, I've coached coaches, so I've worked with other coaches, and even people who are just poker coaches. I often tell them that like you need to remember you're working with like a whole person, and like the felt sense of the situation, like the client's felt sense of what's happening, has to be involved, even when you're trying to move strategic needles. Because as long as, if it doesn't connect to like the body's sense of the situation, you say whatever information you want at them, it's not going to stick. And I think if anyone's listening to this, that's like an important point in learning as well, like to really learn to have a good internal sense of what you think is happening when you're, even when you're studying information, is like a really important step. And it sounds like the benefit of hypnotherapy is, yeah, it just brings out your whole felt sense of these situations. And a lot of times they originate in childhood. Yeah.
And one of the things I'll say often is, if you if you don't know what to do, you need a strategic coach. If you know what to do but you're not capable of doing it, that's when you need to be working on your mindset. And I think that's another mistake that players can make, where if then if they're not already following what they know they should be doing, more technical study can't help you, because you already believe you know what you should be doing, and you're not making those decisions at the table. So then you have to do the mindset work to enable you to play the way you believe you should be playing, and it might be right and it might not be right, and then you go through the whole process again of, did it work? Okay, no, it didn't. Okay, now I need to get some new training, upgrade my skills. Am I able to implement those new skills emotionally? Am I capable of bluffing at these frequencies, etc.? And then again, if there's a mental block, they have to go back to the mindset coaching and sort of
Yeah.
cycle.
Yeah. Do you view, I'm assuming you do, but I'm curious how important you view the kind of relational aspect in the hypnotherapy you do, because I could see someone having the, again, incorrect belief that if hypnotherapy, that they could think they could just get it from like an audio recording or something.
Ah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I believe that it's predominantly rapport. So a big lever in any form of coaching. Rapport is just extremely important. And you are working as a team to overcome these issues, rather than, as I say, me doing something to somebody, or them just collecting hypnotherapy from me. When it comes to audio, it's not really possible to make audios that are digging into and exploring someone's past and working through issues, because it's obviously it's one directional. So that doesn't really work for the regression based stuff. The audios are good for state change. So I've got my app Prime Mind. It's very good for short term state change. So, hey, you want to drop into a feeling of focus, you listen to an audio prior to playing poker to get yourself into that focus state. But that doesn't mean you're going to be focused tomorrow. You'd need to listen to it again tomorrow to get back into that state change. With the regression work, if you manage to resolve the issues, the change should be long lasting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think I really can't speak enough to like, I myself used to be very skeptical. I was one of these people who thought like, who the past is irrelevant. Like who cares? Like it just doesn't matter. I came from, like I said, I was interested in meditation. So you hear philosophical ideas in meditation that it's just like, oh, the present moment is all that exists. But again, I didn't realize the degree to which I was filtering my own neuroses and fear of my past into this thing. But I really, as much as literally as much as I have had like transcendent experiences of meditation that have really changed my view and outlook on the world, nothing like it has brought me so much peace to do similar things where I revisit experiences and really feel the sense of like what I call the present sense of the past loosening, where it's like the present sense of the past has like let go and like I'm no longer reliving. I just want to, I just, it's worth saying that like I think people underestimate how free you can feel.
I mean, it's such a wonderful description of what I was trying to mention earlier in terms of removing those masks so that you're
Yeah.
becoming the more Jared version of Jared.
Yeah.
It's like this, like as you're no longer reliving that, you get to be you in the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, and really step into like what I often tell people is like with poker, or with anything, it's just like you get to know what it's like to like live your life, like to like your life has this natural forward momentum to it, and like your body wants to move forward, and as you kind of like put those things down, you get to experience this like life forward momentum where it's just like I want, like me, Jared, like you said, wants to carry my life forward. And if that's in the avenue of poker, if that's in the avenue of coaching, if that's whatever avenue that it's in, that's where I feel it. And I think I'm very passionate about like I just don't think many people have experienced that enough and like are remain skeptical of or like tepid or but if they knew what it was like to just like no, like it's so freeing to be, like you said, to get to be you, to like get to feel like I'm living honestly me. And yeah.
And I still don't think that there's an end point. So it's like, again, I get to be more of me, but I don't know that I'm certainly. Oh, I don't know I'll ever reach all of me. And if I do, I
Yeah.
think I'd be like sad. I've got nothing else to do. It feels like
Yeah.
there's no more journey left.
Well, this is I think where the Buddhist like the meditative experiences are nice, where you can actually real for me like have moments where you realize like, oh, there isn't a me. I am a process. Like that's what I am. I am change. So like of course, like what it is to live on the precipice of that change. Like it's to live on the edge. David White has a poem called "Living on the Edge," and it's a beautiful poem. But like to live forward is to live on the edge of what you know and understand, and that's kind of what you're like describing, where like, there is no end, because like life is always moving forward. And I think it's like a really beautiful thing. And it's, yeah, it's just, I think it's really interesting how like the center of what it is we think we know is the thing that's stopping us from like moving forward, you know? Yeah.
From experiencing everything.
Yeah. So I have one question for you. I was curious. So I had a few students send me a tweet of yours, and I just want to have you. I'm curious if you'd want to clarify what it is you mean when you, or I don't know. To be fair, I don't know the degree to which you actually have anything to do with your tweets. So
Yep.
yeah. But I think it'd be. I'm not trying to like have a gotcha moment or something. You can feel free to like not be interested in talking about this, but um, I'll just read you the tweet. So it says winning over a year of poker is 20% luck and 80% skill. Winning over a decade of poker is 1% luck and 99% skill. A high level of skill applied over volume is how you make winning inevitable. I get the spirit.
And that's all that it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 I mean, the maths,
Yeah.
it's the spirit of the, if you work hard at a high level of skill over a long period of time, chance of success is very, very high. And that's really, again, it's a spirit of, rather
Yeah.
than
Yeah, yeah.
rather than a mathematical equation.
Yeah, I knew I had to bring it up because I've had a few people who are in poker who are like, this is not true. And I'm like, well, it's not like mathematically true, but the spirit of it. And to be fair, I think what this is really meant for is for people who consistently believe they're not winning because of just their bad luck. If, yeah, right. Like, and maybe even feel hopeless or powerless over their ability to do something to improve their luck. And I think, that's probably more the
Yeah,
spirit
I
of it.
mean,
But
this is a case of hard work and effort with edge over time. Um, is where success comes from.
yeah, I'm sympathetic to the people who feel like they, or more or less have proof that they've run extraordinarily poorly, and then feel. I think the people who sent this to me feel like it was an attack on their performance or mental game. The fact that they've run poorly, but I know that's uh, not what was being said.
There was certainly no personal attack on someone who's been running poorly over a period of time. But again, it's all of these things. Sometimes you have to be the baddie, Jared.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
And
know?
when people send me these things too, because I think I had a lack of appreciation for these kinds of things when I wasn't having my own business and trying to like say things, and like you're trying to get the spirit of things across, and you're trying to do it in a way that I try way too much to put nuance into my marketing. And it just doesn't work. And I think people who haven't been on that side of it don't understand that, like,
There's an extreme difference, unfortunately, to marketing to the general public and marketing to niche experts in an industry. And we're in a situation, just to be clear, where I'm working in very different markets. So I'm working with selling, primed mind, which just starts off as a free product. People can download it for free, and we're trying to get as many people into trying to work on their mindset as possible. And and books on poker that is $20 book on poker to get them an understanding of the work they're going to need to put in to be a winning poker player. And then the other side of my work, I'm working with some of the highest performers on the planet in many difficult industries. And the messaging that you have to put out for both of the messaging doesn't work. So we're putting out sometimes some relatively basic tweets to try and encourage people to look at mindset as a concept. And then on the other side of things, I'm working with these elite high performers, and it's a difficult thing to merge.
yeah, it is.
You know,
Yeah, it
and you're
is.
playing the game, and we're so some of your friends don't feel that we've done that correctly in that place, and for them it's definitely right. That's not correct, and clearly though that maths is not accurate maths in a poker. This is not yet. That's obviously correct. The spirit of it is we want people to understand the importance of focusing on what they can control.
Yeah. I mean, for me too, the important thing as always is like if a tweet online causes a very large emotional reaction in you, also there's
That's the
this
great place
this
to
is the
start.
thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah, yeah,
mean, that's a great place to start the work. In the same way as if it had created an extreme response in me that someone was upset, then that would be work for me to do there. They'd be like, "Oh, this is interesting. Like that was really triggering." Um, and it's just a sign of if you get a physical response, then that's one of the places that you have to dig in and say, "Okay, what's me here?"
yeah, yeah. And I think we'll wrap up here because I know you have a hard out, but also one of the best parts of working on myself over the years has been learning to like really hold like closely and softly my own reactions to things as a sign of me. Like this hits me in this way, and that's actually nice to not feel as much the impulse to be like, oh, that person did something wrong, but to be like, oh, this is me coming alive. Like this is part of my life and my history and my meaning coming alive in this moment. And
And yeah, and it's like as you say, everything is just a flag. It's just a bell ringing, and we get to explore our pathway through life with these different bells that are ringing, and some of them we choose to work on, and some of them we don't. But yeah, it's just part of the game.
beautiful. Well, thank you, Elliot, so much for doing this. Please plug whatever it is, tell people where they can find you and reach you. And
Oh, well, thank you. If people are interested in coaching, elliotroe.com. We've got our app, Prime Mind. As I say, there's a lot of free content. We just wanted as many people to be digging into this as possible. So you can download it on the iPhone or Google Play. A ton of it is free. There is an upsell if you want to get more audios, but there are a lot of free audios to try just out there to help people. And then we've got a team of coaches who help clients with this work who might not be the right fit for me. So if anyone's interested in working on their mindset with hypnotherapy as the specific modality, reach out to us on those websites. Oh,
awesome.
and then
Again,
I've got A Game Poker Book as well that I forgot.
oh, yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, so check
Awesome.
that.
Awesome. Well, again, Elliot, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.